Op die trappe van die Johannesburgse effektebeurs het Julius Malema van die EFF laasweek gesê, dit is ons land en ons kan oral gaan waar ons wil. Heel dae hier is getel. Julle behandel ons soos misdadigers omdat ons swart is. Julle haat swart mense soveel dat julle hulle nie langs julle wil hê nie. Ook die Kamer van Mynwese en die Reservebank is bygekom tydens 'n hoogs gedissiplineerde en onverwags groot optog wat die strate van ons finansiële hoofstad rooi gekleur het. Die man wat vanaand hier is om hierdie opruiende retoriek te verdedig en te verduidelik, is Mbuyiseni Ndlozi, woordvoerder van die EFF. Mbuyiseni, welcome to Insig.
Baie dankie.
Why now, October 2015, for a march like this, with these particular demands ranging from education to the role of the mines? Why now?
Well, when we sat in our plenum in the beginning of the year to plan our program, we thought that we should choose October to corroborate the economic freedom march that happened and was led by the Commander-in-Chief over 3 years ago. It was to keep that tradition alive. You would remember that then the march ended in Pretoria, but this time it ended in Sandton.
Weren't you just inspired by the success of the Fees Must Fall student movement around the country?
No. We already had it in plan, and it was announced to the rest of the media. There were even calendars made. 27th October was going to be the Economic Freedom March, and the decision was taken way back in February.
Okay, let's start with the education component of your 17 proposals. I'm not going to go through all of them, but you ask, among others, for companies on the JSE to adopt schools, to adopt colleges, to decentralize economic activity, to pay for the studies and all the ancillary costs for 100 students each. Why this focus on education? Do you think that this crisis of education is increasing in urgency right now?
Yes, I think that actually it's embarrassing that we've had to wait for 20 years to have a significant conversation as a nation about education. You know, with an uneducated population, even the freedoms that our Constitution, enshrined in 1994 are not going to be safe. Education is how you guarantee people's freedoms, all those freedoms, including the right to life. But freedoms like who to vote for, participate in political action, freedoms like freedom of speech, they need an educated population, and majority of South Africans are not only uneducated, some of them are miseducated.
So, Mbuyiseni, there were a few other more controversial proposals, and I think some of these viewers would think are very reasonable, but then we go on to 51% on the JSE of the investment must go to the workers, workers who work for these companies. The mines, you say, don't play any positive role. They should start playing a positive role in communities. 70% of retail goods that are bought by companies listed on the JSE must be bought locally. Have you considered all the effects of these policy proposals, that buying, for example, 70% of locally produced goods might actually make goods more expensive for poor people? Some critics have said.
No, not at all, because if you're buying locally, there are two important things that immediately happen. That means you're going to expand the production of those goods. That puts money in people's pockets because you're going to have to employ them. And then they're able to have the buying power of the very goods that they produce. So it has that particular circulatory power. That's why we don't have jobs, is because you think too much of saviors from outside. You've got to capitalize on doing as much as possible, and that would lead to a lot of economic self-sufficiency. 60% of the food stuff on shelves in South Africa come from outside. They come already packed on ships.
But economic
That's not good for economics.
Okay, fair enough. But economic self-sufficiency was something that we strived towards in this country in a previous dispensation when we were cut off from the rest of the world.
No, you were cut off from the rest of the world. That you were not necessarily cut off from the rest of the world because you were pursuing economic self-sufficiency. It should be the dream of every nation to be as independently as possible in terms of how it clothes itself, how it shelters itself, how it feeds itself. At least in terms of those basic things, you should have your capacities within the country to feed yourself.
Just by the way, where does your T-shirt come from?
It's possibly coming from China.
Okay.
It's possible. I mean, I know that there is particularly the red T-shirt in South Africa, rounds out extremely quickly from local producers. But there's always a commitment within the organization to buy locally first before we go anywhere else.
Okay, just quickly, Mbuyiseni, on foreign investment. So, you know, do you recognize that it is important for us to grow the economy by getting capital from the outside? Because no economy in recent generations has really flourished without external investment. I get your point about internally produced economical activity and growth and savings and so forth.
Because you would agree that you would have realized that the emphasis is where production is happening. If we're getting foreign direct investment but production is not happening here, then you won't have jobs. Manufacturing must happen here. The manufacturing of cell phones, factories must be opened here of all the electronics that we use, including the mic that I'm mic'd on now. It's not produced
But
here.
who will open these factories if the rhetoric of the EFF at the JSE and directed at investors is as hostile as this? You say JSE consists of racist whites, not you, but your commander-in-chief.
Well, that's official. If he speaks, it's official.
Your days are numbered here. I mean, if I hear that and I'm a prospective investor from China or Germany or so, why will I invest here?
Well, you shouldn't come if you're racist. That's the point. Racism has no place on this land. The blood of many, many activists has watered our democratic grounds. We should not have any place for any racist, even if they've got all the billions in the world. There is no place. The commander-in-chief made those statements after JSE blocked an entire block and blocked us out, you know, and got private security. We had gone through Section 205 to get permission to march and deliver the memorandum at the doorstep of the JSE. And they did that. There's no other interpretation that makes us feel. Every time you quarantine inner cities, you remind us of the life of black people under apartheid within the inner city. So he had to tell them to their face that we got permission, we're not here illegally. But you are treating us like that because you continue to despise black people. So if you are racist, even if you're a billionaire, you don't belong in South Africa. We don't want racists. That's all he was saying.
How much has changed inside the JSE when it comes to ownership patterns, according to the EFF?
Not that much. I mean, the City Press article that Fariel wrote alongside the commander-in-chief spoke of 10% of direct ownership, for an example, and it goes to about 23% through investment companies like of workers, for an example. But direct ownership of the JSE remains very minimal. That's why the CEO herself, the next morning, she was making admittances specifically to the ownership patterns within JSE. The earlier point you were making, you've got to get all those companies, instead of concentrating on politically connected people to give shares to demonstrate that you're transforming. Involve the workers. That's your best partner in doing business. It's the people that are working. Give shares to black workers as opposed to, you know, few individuals in the form of the BEE.
Are there not some examples of best practice, even in the JSE, of companies who have actually done this in proper, broadly based black economic empowerment schemes, including, for example, some mining firms?
If direct ownership is still very low, that means they've failed.
But
that
are
means
there,
we still
are there
have to
examples here
agitate.
of individual companies who have done something which the EFF admires?
I can't think of any now. I'm sure that because of the 10% that we are talking about, there's definitely people who are doing something right. But, you know, they are suffocated by the rest of the 90% who are not doing the right thing. And so, yes, there are people who are doing the right thing. But an express majority, it has to be seen in the daily living of an entire black population that still lives in squalor.
Mbuyiseni, and I think that many people, and most of our viewers, if not all of them, have tremendous sympathy with that. But there's also a context here of rising tensions in this country, not only racially, but that's one aspect of it. Is it not irresponsible in these times to say things at the JSE like, your days are numbered here, you said you hate black people, I mean, very inflammatory, some critics would even say racist rhetoric directed at white South Africans. Is that not in itself posing a danger to the fabric of society?
When you see racism anywhere in the world, not just in South Africa, rear its ugly head. You must attack it.
But is this not racism?
No, I just explained to you that the statements were said in a context where the JSE quarantines itself, literally with fences and private security, not even through the police. Our march was led by the police over 27 kilometers. We were in front, right at the doorstep of the Reserve Bank. We didn't do anything in front of gold. That's where gold is kept. That's where the nation's money is kept. We didn't do anything there. JSE is a private entity, quarantines itself, and literally violates our freedom of movement. So you've got to speak in strongest terms against that. And the Commander-in-Chief was speaking about white racists. And I will repeat it here, I will repeat it anywhere. That type of treatment is not welcome in a democracy, is not welcome in South Africa, even if it comes in billions of rands.
Mbuyiseni, thank you very much. I hope next time you're wearing a local t-shirt. Dit was Mbuyiseni Ndlozi, woordvoerder van die EFF. Insig is net na die handelsblitse terug met 'n gesprek oor die krisisse binne die DA.